Okay, picture me trying to walk through a wall right now. Ouch. Solid wall, right? Wrong. Scientists just proved that this solid wall and everything else around you is basically a grand illusion. And guess who called this thousands of years ago? Yep, Buddha himself was dropping quantum physics knowledge while people were still figuring out which berries wouldn't kill them. Hey everyone, Matt here. And I promise I didn't hit my head too hard on that wall. Today's revelation is going to mess with your brain way more than any wall collision. Remember last month when we talked about Einstein's secret connection to Buddhism? That was just the appetizer. Today we're serving the main course. And trust me, reality itself is on the menu. See those tiny particles that make up everything? They're basically acting like my little sister, completely changing their behavior the moment someone watches them. No joke. Actual scientists are scratching their heads because particles straight up decide to do different things just because we're looking. Buddhist masters weren't just sitting under trees looking peaceful. They were basically quantum physics prophets, describing this exact weird behavior centuries before we had microscopes powerful enough to see it. In the next few minutes, you'll discover why Einstein freaked out about these discoveries, why Schrödinger had to drag his poor cat into this mess, and why these invisible particles prove that your mind is basically a reality-bending superpower. No, I'm not quoting Dr. Strange. This is actual science meeting ancient wisdom in the most incredible way. And now, let me show you the experiment that made Einstein lose his mind. Imagine two identical particles. Seemingly simple, right? Well, what happens next is so bizarre. It made even Einstein himself say, "What the quantum?" Okay, he didn't exactly say that, but what you're about to see made the world's greatest physicist question everything he knew about reality. Let's start with the weirdest experiment in scientific history. The one that still makes physicists wake up in a cold sweat. Remember in The Matrix, when Neo sees reality isn't actually real? Well, this experiment makes that look like a kid's magic trick. Imagine shooting tiny particles at a wall with two slits in it. Behind the wall, there's a screen that shows where these particles land. Now, if I threw tennis balls at these slits, we'd get exactly what you'd expect. Two neat strips where the balls went through. But when scientists did this with quantum particles, something impossible happened. Instead of two strips, they got this weird striped pattern, like waves on a beach. When two ripples meet, they create these amazing interference patterns. You know when you drop two rocks in a pond, and the ripples cross each other making that cool diamond shape? That's exactly what these particles were doing, except they were single particles. Each particle went through both slits at the same time, and then interfered with itself. If you're thinking, that's not how reality works, you're right. That's exactly what Einstein said. He was so disturbed by this randomness in quantum mechanics that he famously declared, "God does not play dice with the universe." He believed there had to be some hidden rules making everything predictable. In fact, this experiment made him so uncomfortable. He spent years trying to prove it wrong. Here's where it gets proper weird. Scientists thought, let's watch these particles to see which slit they actually go through. And this is when reality broke. The moment they observed the particles, the pattern disappeared. Just by watching, they changed how the particles behaved. Consider the implications. These tiny particles know when we're watching them. Well, it's not that these particles know in a conscious sense, but their behavior changes based on measurement, suggesting a fundamental link between observation and reality. It's like reality itself only decides what to do when someone's watching. Just like those agents in the Matrix popping into existence when someone looks. And hey, if you're into how the Matrix and Buddhism connect, stick around. We've got a mind-bending episode coming up in our pop culture series about exactly that. Scientists tried to outsmart these particles. They waited until after the particles went through the slits to measure them. guess what happened? The particles somehow changed their past behavior. It's like they knew they were going to be measured in the future and retroactively decided how to behave. This is called the delayed choice experiment, and it challenges our understanding of cause and effect. Imagine deciding to record a basketball game after it's already finished, and the players somehow change their moves based on your choice to watch later. That's the delayed choice experiment in action. But we're not done yet. See, light does this too. Sometimes it acts like a wave, making these interference patterns. Other times it behaves like tiny particles called photons. It's literally both at the same time until we look at it. This made Einstein pull his remaining hair out. He called it spooky action at a distance. Now, flashback thousands of years. Buddhist masters were teaching that reality isn't fixed until it's observed, a concept called pratitya samutpada, or dependent origination, in the Yogacara school of Buddhism. They specifically taught that consciousness and perceived reality are inseparable, that nothing exists independently of the observing mind. They said the observer and the observed can't be separated. Everyone thought they were speaking in metaphors. Turns out they were describing quantum physics before we even had a word for it. Ready to go even deeper? Because what you just learned is only the beginning, and what comes next will make this look like child's play. So if particles change when we look at them, what does that mean for everything around us? Take a second and look at your surroundings. That chair, your phone, maybe a coffee mug, they're all made of particles. And get this. According to quantum physics, none of it exists in a definite state until someone observes it. Sounds crazy, right? Scientists call this the observer effect. Let's break it down with the most famous and controversial thought experiment ever. Schrödinger's cat. Picture this. A cat is sealed in a box with a device that has a 50% chance of releasing deadly poison. According to quantum physics, until someone opens that box and looks inside, the cat exists in both states simultaneously, alive and dead. I know, pretty dark for a physics lesson, but stay with me. Schrödinger created this thought experiment to show how ridiculous quantum mechanics seemed. How could something be in two opposite states at once? But here's the plot twist. He accidentally proved quantum physics was even weirder than anyone thought. Einstein hated this so much. He spent years arguing about it with his friend Niels Bohr. He famously said, "Do you really believe the moon isn't there if you're not looking at it?" He also wrote, "I like to think the moon is there even if I am not looking at it." Poor Einstein. The universe turned out to be way stranger than even he could imagine. But this isn't just theory anymore. In groundbreaking 2021 experiments at TU Delft, scientists created a quantum drum the width of a human hair that existed in two states simultaneously, both vibrating and still. This wasn't just theoretical anymore. They actually achieved quantum superposition with an object large enough to see with a microscope. They've also shown that atoms won't decay until someone observes them. It's like reality itself is camera shy. This discovery revolutionizes our understanding. In the Lankavatara Sutra, one of Buddhism's most profound texts, Buddha explains that the world we see is created by our consciousness. He teaches that objects don't have a fixed, independent existence. They only become real when our mind observes them. He even used the metaphor of waves emerging from an ocean of possibilities, exactly like what quantum physicists call the wave function collapse. And it goes even deeper. The Avatamsaka Sutra describes a reality where every particle contains all other particles, exactly like quantum entanglement. The Heart Sutra's famous phrase, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form," perfectly describes quantum field theory's discovery that particles are just excitations in underlying fields. These aren't vague similarities. The texts describe specific phenomena that quantum physics wouldn't confirm for millennia. Now, some physicists and scholars argue these parallels might be oversimplified. They point out that quantum mechanics is about specific mathematical models, and experimental observations. While Buddhist teachings focus on human experience and the nature of consciousness, while the similarities are striking, it's important to understand they developed in very different contexts with different goals. Let's try something together. Close your eyes for a moment. Now open them. According to quantum physics, everything you see just collapsed into reality from an infinite sea of possibilities, just like Buddha described. Consciousness isn't just observing reality, it's participating in creating it. But if our minds have this much power over reality, what else are they capable of? Well, that's exactly what we're about to find out. Remember our electron going through 2 slits at once? That was just the beginning. Scientists decided to try something even crazier. They fired one single electron at the slits. Just one. And somehow, that single electron created an interference pattern with itself. It's like one person high-fiving themselves from multiple directions at once. This broke physics so badly that scientists had to come up with a whole new interpretation. The Copenhagen interpretation. Basically, they said reality exists as a cloud of possibilities until consciousness collapses it into one outcome. But many scientists hated this idea. Why? Because it suggests consciousness itself might be the foundation of reality. Let me say that again. Your consciousness might be creating reality. Not in some woo-woo way, but according to hardcore physics mathematics. This is called the quantum measurement problem, and it's driving physicists nuts. See, no one can explain how observation collapses quantum possibilities into reality. They know it happens, they can measure it, but they can't explain why. Now, ancient Buddhist masters like Nagarjuna weren't just theorizing about this, they were demonstrating it. In the sacred texts, there are accounts of masters who could alter physical reality through the power of their consciousness. People thought these were just spiritual stories, until quantum physics showed that consciousness really does affect physical reality. Modern-day Buddhist masters like the Dalai Lama aren't surprised by quantum physics at all. During a mind science conference in 2015, when physicists explained quantum non-locality to him, he smiled and said, "In Buddhist philosophy, particularly in the Madhyamaka view, we find detailed explanations of how things arise through interdependence and the way things exist only through designation, rather than from their own side." The scientists were stunned. Here was centuries-old wisdom describing their cutting-edge discoveries. Think this is all theoretical? The quantum observer effect is already revolutionizing technology. Quantum computers use this principle to solve problems regular computers can't handle. Scientists are developing quantum encryption that's impossible to hack because the very act of observing the data changes it. Even medical imaging is being transformed by quantum sensors that can detect diseases earlier than ever before. Want to experience this quantum weirdness yourself? Try this. Focus intensely on any object near you. Really look at its details. Now realize, those particles you're looking at are actually undefined until your consciousness interacts with them. You're not just observing reality, you're participating in creating it, moment by moment. But if consciousness can collapse quantum possibilities into reality, there's an even more fundamental question we need to ask. What exactly is this reality that we're collapsing? The answer reveals a truth so profound that it challenges everything we think we know about the physical world. Here's a fact that will mess with your head. If you took all the actual solid matter in your body and squished it together, removing all the empty space, you'd be smaller than a grain of rice. That's right. 99.99% of you is literally nothing. But how can this be true? Pick up something solid, feels real, right? Well, here comes the quantum plot twist. What we think of as solid matter is actually just forces pushing against each other. Like when you try to push two magnets together, you feel something solid, but there's literally nothing between them. So what's really there? Scientists call them quantum fields. Think of it like a video game. The entire game world is just ones and zeros until the computer processes them into what looks like solid objects. Our reality works the same way. These quantum fields are like the game's code, constantly creating and destroying particles, making what we think is solid matter. These quantum fields are everywhere, creating what we think is solid matter. That coffee cup you're holding? It's actually the electromagnetic field pushing against the electron fields in your hand. Your car isn't a solid object. It's countless quantum fields dancing together to create the illusion of solidity. Even light isn't just waves or particles. It's ripples in the electromagnetic field, like waves on an invisible ocean. And this is where Buddhism drops the mic. 2,500 years ago, Buddha taught about sunyata, emptiness. This doesn't mean nothing exists, but rather that everything we perceive as solid and independent is actually made up of interconnected, ever-changing parts. Just as quantum physics reveals particles as waves of probability rather than fixed entities, sunyata teaches that reality is fluid, dependent on our perception and interactions. Monks were laughed at for centuries for saying this. Now quantum physics is proving they were right all along. Think about your favorite game character. They seem solid on screen. They can jump, fight, collect items, but zoom in close enough and what do you find? Just pixels? Zoom in further? Just electrical signals. That's exactly how our reality works. What feels solid is actually mostly empty space filled with probability waves. Let's get personal for a second. Your body, your bones, everything you think is solid is actually more like a hologram made of quantum fields. You're not sitting on a chair right now. You're floating on a force field of quantum possibilities. And those atoms making up your body, they're not even in one place at a time. And just when you thought it couldn't get weirder, remember how we said quantum particles only become definite when observed? Well, this means your entire body only takes definite form because consciousness is observing it. Without observation, you'd be a cloud of quantum possibilities. But if everything is empty, if nothing is truly solid, then what's really real? The answer to that is about to turn everything you know about reality completely upside down. If reality is empty and nothing is solid, how does anything work at all? Well, Buddha didn't just tell us everything was empty. He gave us the source code, 5 fundamental laws that control everything in the universe. The 5 niyamas. First is utu niyama, the physical laws. When you drop your phone, gravity pulls it down. But at the quantum level, those same laws let particles tunnel through barriers and appear in multiple places simultaneously. It's why your GPS needs quantum corrections to stay accurate. Then there's bija niyama. Bija niyama governs biological systems. Remember how we said observation changes reality? It's why plants know which way is up without eyes, using quantum processes in their cells. It's how monarch butterflies navigate using quantum-entangled molecules as internal compasses. Living things are quantum observers, constantly collapsing wave functions, creating reality through interaction, just like our double-slit experiment showed us. Number 3 is kama niyama. And no, it's not just about good and bad karma. It's about quantum cause and effect. When paired electrons remain connected across galaxies, they're demonstrating this law. Your actions literally create quantum ripples that affect the entire universe. Even Einstein called this spooky. Sita Niyama explains consciousness and quantum observation. It's why double-slit experiments change based on measurement. Every choice you make collapses infinite possibilities into one reality. You're doing it right now as you watch this video. Buddha taught that mind and matter aren't separate, that consciousness shapes reality. 2,000 years later, quantum physics proved this with the observer effect. Coincidence? I think not. Finally, there's Dhamma Niyama, the fundamental nature of reality itself. Remember that quantum field creating your coffee cup. That same field extends through the entire universe. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is connected through these quantum fields, exactly as Buddha taught. Here's the fascinating part. While these parallels are compelling, we should approach them with both excitement and careful consideration. Some scientists argue that quantum physics and Buddhist wisdom, though both profound, might be describing different levels of reality. The quantum world operates by precise mathematical rules, while Buddhist insights come from deep meditation and philosophical analysis. Maybe the truth lies in understanding both perspectives, each valuable in its own way, rather than trying to make them exactly the same. So what does this mean for you? Everything you see, everything you touch, every moment of your life is running on these same principles. You're not just living in reality. You're actively participating in creating it. Your consciousness isn't just observing the universe. It's part of the code that makes it real. And if you understand this, if you really get what this means, everything changes. Because once you know the code, once you see how reality really works, you can never look at your world the same way again. These aren't just cool facts. Understanding quantum reality can transform how you approach everyday challenges. When you're stuck on a problem, remember quantum superposition. Multiple solutions can exist simultaneously until you observe them. Feeling disconnected? Quantum entanglement shows us we're fundamentally connected to everything around us. Worried about making the wrong choice? Every decision you make is literally creating one reality from infinite possibilities. Just like quantum observation collapses probability waves into definite states. Ready for the final revelation? Because what comes next will show you how to use this knowledge to transform your entire reality. So here's where everything comes together. Remember that wall I tried to walk through at the start? Well, now you know it's not really solid. Nothing is. Reality isn't fixed. It's a dance between consciousness and quantum possibilities. You're not just a passive observer in this universe. You're an active participant in creating reality. Every time you focus your attention, every time you make an observation, you're collapsing quantum possibilities into actual reality, just like those ancient Buddhist masters understood. Think about what this really means. Your consciousness isn't just along for the ride. It's fundamental to how reality works. Those quantum particles, that empty space, those probability waves, they're all waiting for you to interact with them, to make them real. Want to experience this power? Close your eyes for a moment. Now open them. Everything you see just emerged from an infinite sea of possibilities, because your consciousness interacted with it. You just participated in creating reality, and you do this every single moment of every day. The ancient Buddhists weren't just being metaphorical when they said the mind creates the world. They were describing the deepest truth about reality that science has ever discovered. And now you know it too. So what are you going to do with this knowledge? How will you use your reality-shaping consciousness? Will you stay trapped in old patterns of thinking? Or will you embrace your role as an active creator of reality? If you want to explore more amazing connections between modern science and ancient Buddhist wisdom, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Because trust me, what we covered today is just the beginning of how weird reality gets. Until then, remember, you're not just watching reality unfold, you're helping create it. And that changes everything. See you in the quantum realm.